Howdy, it's Jim Arado in Spring Hill, Tennessee, and that is Ripavilla Plantation. And this is a great area with a ton of Civil War history. It's located between Columbia and Franklin, and it's just a little south of Nashville. And this is just a great area for Civil War and history fans like myself. A lot of nicely preserved places like this, and yeah, just nice areas. Period. If I'll put up another video about Ripavilla Plantation. If you're not familiar with it, it looks like it's actually about to close. I filmed this in March, and I'm recording this in March 2021, and they've you can Google it, but the government that owns the house, they're not renewing the contract with the historic group that has managed it for the last 4 years. So whether or not you can tour Ripavilla is kind of up in the air for the near future. So anyway, yeah, so make note of that. But right now we're doing the Spring Hill driving tour. And we're going to stop number one. We're leaving Ripavilla Plantation and we're going to stop number one. Let me real quick though read a historic marker from in front of Ripavilla just about the battle, just to give you a little information. By 3 p.m. on November 29th, 1864, Union General John M. Schofield realized that his command was in great danger. The bulk of his army was posted near Columbia, Tennessee, while Confederate General John Bell Hood's troops were north of him, approaching the Columbia Turnpike near Spring Hill. To prevent being cut off from the rest of the Federal Army at Nashville, Schofield moved northward. At about nightfall, the leading elements of his army were approaching Spring Hill. General Thomas H. Ruger's division led Schofield's column and soon passed to the north, moving right past the Confederate troops camped here. Union General Jacob D. Cox's division followed, and next came General Thomas J. Wood's division. As these troops passed, they saw the shimmering lights of thousands of Southern campfires in the fields around you. The hours ticked by. At about 1 a.m., General Nathan Kimball's division marched north and also slipped away. Finally, at about 5 a.m., General George D. Wagner's division, which had arrived at Spring Hill about noon on November 29th, and helped fend off General Patrick Clyburn's movement towards the Turnpike, began to withdraw and move north towards Franklin. 5 relatively vulnerable Federal divisions had just marched directly past Hood's Confederates, in perhaps the greatest escape in the history of the war. And that happened basically right there by Ripavilla, what we saw at the very beginning when I was taping. Right now at this moment, though, we're driving towards stop number 1 on the driving tour. This is stop number 1, and it actually kind of start the tour and end it at Ripavilla. And then there's, I believe, 8 or 9 stops in between. And there's a nice, I found this actually some time ago, Twilight of an Army Guide to Spring Hill Battlefield. It's a brochure I must have picked up at a visitor center at some point. It's really slick, though. It's a really nicely done driving tour brochure. And it has a nice map and tells what you're going to see at each stop. And we're driving to stop number 1, which is Oaklawn, the Absalom Thomas House, Hood's headquarters. And we passed out on the main road a moment ago. We passed a marker for it. Let me read that to you, just so you have you know what that marker says. And it says Hood's Command Post, November 29th through 30th, 1864. General Hood and staff spent the night in the Absalom Thomas home, 2.8 miles. Advance units of his army moving by country roads had contacted Federal units at Spring Hill, but had not gained control of the road to Nashville. In the morning, Hood found that Schofield had eluded him and was en route to Franklin. So that's fascinating. And then there is a historic marker right by the home that we're driving to right now. And some of these signs are a tad bit weathered. I am going to do the best I can to read from photos I took. Bear with me, though, because, yeah, some of them are a bit faded. But in front of the Oak Lawn, the Absalom Thomas Home, Hood's headquarters, there's this sign. Late in the afternoon of November 29th, 1864, Hood established the headquarters of the Army of Tennessee at this location. Hood spent part of the evening sitting on a log near the fish pond of the house while officers and generals came and went seeking orders. While Confederate attacks and units went awry south of town, Hood told one general, General Forrest holds the turnpike with a portion of his forces north of Spring Hill and will stop the enemy if he tries to pass toward Franklin. And so in the morning we will have a surrender without a fight. We can sleep quietly tonight. The Thompson family provided Hood and his staff with a big feast. Hood, his left arm crippled at Gettysburg and his right leg amputated at Chickamauga, had to be strapped into his saddle. During the afternoon, his horse had slipped on the treacherous roads and fallen on Hood. He was in physical pain, and it has been suggested that he used whiskey or laudanum, an opium derivative, to dull his agony. Believing that Schofield's army was trapped and being incapacitated by his injuries, Hood went to bed at 9 in the evening. Meanwhile, Schofield's army was continuing to move north on the Columbia-Franklin Pike. So, yeah, that is some interesting stuff. Yeah, and we're actually coming up on the house right here. And not, you may or may not have seen it. I probably shouldn't point it out. But there are armadillos in western Tennessee. And we passed one. I don't think I quite got it on video there. But yeah, so this is the house, and obviously it's gated. It's a private residence. There's the historic marker though, and I'm sure they're used to people like me coming right up to the gate and just kind of filming up there. It is a lovely home, as you can tell, and I Googled, and somebody had told me this, and I just confirmed it. George Jones and Tammy Wynette once lived here. This was once their home, and I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, but a beautiful house. Don't think it's ever open to the public. I think they might do weddings and that sort of thing there at times. But, yeah, that would be a great house to tour at some point if you're into touring historic homes. For sure, that would be a great place. And we're going to the next stop. And by the way, this is a really fun battlefield tour to do. If you've got kids, or if you've done bigger tours, maybe in bigger cities or something, and you don't like battlefield tours, this is a great one to do because there's a good amount of drive-in. Spring Hill is a nice little community. We found a cute little coffee shop I'll mention later. And there's some nice stops. There's some, it's kind of just a nice mellow tour. And if you have the map of the driving tour, it's an easy one to do. And here in a little bit, there's actually a nice walk you can take. And we actually took that walk. And just real quick, though, while I'm thinking about it, let me give you, there's a little bio on both of the main players in this engagement on the brochure that I mentioned earlier. Let me just read a quick bio. There's John M. Schofield, and it says he was a vain, ambitious West Point graduate of the Union. Hood and Schofield had been classmates in the class of 1853. Schofield had graduated 7th, ranked first in the infantry tactics. Hood had graduated 52nd in the class of 54 student officers. The army commanded by Schofield at Spring Hill was the same army of the Ohio that he had commanded throughout the grueling 100 days of the Atlanta campaign, and it consisted of the veteran 4th and 23rd Army Corps. These men in Hood's Army of Tennessee were old adversaries. And then for John Bell Hood, the Middle Tennessee campaign was planned by Confederate Lieutenant General John Bell Hood. Hood had risen from the rank of lieutenant in the Confederate Army to that of lieutenant general by 1864. This rapid promotion was gained through a record of determined assaults and hard fighting, and his reputation as an aggressive, determined warrior was well deserved. However, his relatively low academic standing at West Point suggested that he was not blessed with an imposing intellect. Additionally, he had sustained 2 grave wounds during the course of the war, and he was in constant physical pain throughout the campaign. Wanted to mention right here, we are stopping. This is stop number 2. We're pretty sure it was stop number 2 according to the directions we had on the map, but there was no marker here. And it just says this is the Rally Hill Pike at Rutherford Creek. So, yeah, just keep that in mind if you're doing the tour. And that happens on these historic tours. Sometimes a marker very well could be missing. Just looking at a note of the timeline of the battle. 3 p.m. Clyburn's division crosses Rutherford Creek, southeast of Spring Hill. They are the first Confederate infantry to arrive on the field. About the same time, Hood's horse slips on the muddy, badly rutted road, and Hood sustains a bruising, painful fall. He retires to Absalom Thompson's home, Oaklawn, for the evening. So that gives you a little bit of information there. And next we are going to the Caldwell House site and family cemetery, Forrest's headquarters. And so we're on our way there now. Wanted to mention real quick, though, about John Bell Hood, Confederate, and, a guy who's trying to get something done late in the war, as the odds are starting to get stacked against the CSA. But with John Bell Hood, especially right after the Civil War, I think a lot of people were ticked at him, and he became somewhat of a scapegoat. And I think historians are kind of looking onto him a little more favorably in more modern times. And it seems like even some of the rumors and some of the stuff written about him, there's just not a whole lot to back that up. Kind of a different perception of John Bell Hood as time goes on. And again, man, the guy, leg amputated, arm kind of useless, and he was still going on trying to do what he could. Anyway, just an interesting character. And we are at stop number 3, as I mentioned a moment ago, and there is a beautiful sign here. In fact, some of the historic markers that they've put up for this driving tour are just great. Yeah, look at that. That is, man, if that's not appropriate for Nathan Bedford Forrest, I don't know what is. That is just some impressive and interesting graphics, in my opinion. Does make the sign a little bit hard to read at times, but I just like the graphics on that sign. Let me read you about this here real quick too. Caldwell House, Nathan Bedford Forrest's headquarters. About 11:30 a.m., Nathan Bedford Forrest's cavalry approached Spring Hill from the east. Approximately 2 miles east of town, Forrest encountered advanced skirmishers of the small Federal garrison. For the next 2.5 hours, Forrest's cavalry, well organized and heavily outnumbering the impromptu Federal covering force, drove them back towards Spring Hill. The Union defenders resisted stubbornly in heavy skirmish lines, taking full advantage of the terrain and their superior firepower, which consisted of Spencer carbines, other breech-loading carbines, and Colt revolving rifle muskets. Arriving Federal infantry and artillery repulsed Forrest's attempts to capture Spring Hill. Forrest's men were fatigued after 2 long days in the saddle and 3 hours of combat, and their ammunition was nearly exhausted. Forrest had performed his job admirably, but Hood's infantry would have to continue the work that his cavalrymen had begun. That evening, Forrest established his headquarters at the Caldwell home. Only the family cemetery remains today, and there is a picture on that sign of the house from 1900. And I believe it was in the little field there next to the cemetery. Also, there's a little trucking company there, just a point of reference if you're driving through here. But that was stop number 3 on the driving tour. And we're about to get to stop number 4. And stop number 4 is actually, there's one marker right when you get there, and then you can kind of walk uphill. It's a good little walk, and it is uphill. But we probably spent 45 minutes, an hour at the next stop just walking the little kind of one-way trail that they have for you. We saw other people out there, taking a picnic lunch and just walking for the fun of it. But let me go ahead because there's several signs as you work your way up the hill, and I'm going to go ahead and just give you some information about our very next stop, which is stop number 4. And like I said, there's just so much information. I'm going to go ahead and just let you know what's going on at that next stop. And there is one roadside marker when you get there, and it says Confederate attacks at Spring Hill, November 29th, 1864. General Nathan B. Forrest approached Spring Hill from the east at 11:30 a.m. From here, General James Chalmers launched an attack to seize the Columbia-Nashville Pike to the west. Surprised by strong Union forces, Chalmers was defeated. Upon his return, Forrest noted, "They was in there sure enough, wasn't they, Chalmers?" At 3:45 p.m., Major General Patrick Clyburn's division attacked the Union forces and defeated Brigadier General Luther P. Bradley's brigade. Union resistance and darkness halted Clyburn's pursuit of Bradley's brigade. Yeah, let me go ahead there. Like I said, at each of the stops, there's basically, I want to say 4 or 5 just kind of points once you get to this hill, and you'll see it. You'll see what I'm talking about. There's a pull-in area, and then there's just a few markers as you work your way up the hill. There's a couple cannon up there. It's very scenic, and it offers a really good view of the city. And the markers are very informative. However, like some of the other ones on this tour, they're a little weathered and faded. So forgive me. I'm going to try to read a few of these to you, but yeah, they are faded, and I might have a little trouble here, so I hope you don't mind. The first one is Forrest's 3 p.m. cavalry attack, and it says, as Forrest's cavalry fought their way to the outskirts of Spring Hill by 2:30 p.m., they observed Brigadier General George Wagner's division marching into the town. Forrest, aggressive as ever, determined to attack quickly to seize the town and pike. Brigadier General James Chalmers, whose division Forrest selected to make the attack, protested that Federal infantry and artillery were present in force. Forrest ordered Chalmers to drive those fellows off. "I think you are mistaken. That is only a small cavalry force." One Confederate cavalry officer described the ensuing charge. "We had almost reached the edge of the woods when the shock came. 20 pieces of artillery opened upon us, followed by the fire of a long line of infantry. Horses fumbled over each other and fell, men were shot, and horses galloped away, riderless, and limbs and bark covered the ground. It was a dreadful few minutes. With the charge a failure, Chalmers went back to Forrest, who remarked, 'They was in there, sure enough, wasn't they, Chalmers?'" Okay, so a little bit of the same info that was on the first historic marker I just read you, but that's one of the historic markers there. Yeah, and here we are. You can kind of see I believe that was the sign I just showed you. We're working our way uphill, very nice view. And let me read you the next sign just so you have this information. And again, the sign is fairly weathered. Let me see if I've got a better picture. I took some pictures. There was a sun glare, and like I said, the signs were a bit faded. We'll try to give this one a try. I might have to struggle here, though. In fact, by 4 p.m., Patrick Clyburn had marched his division north on the Rally Hill Pike. A brief meeting with several of Forrest's officers indicated that Federals were located in force between the Rally Hill Pike and the Columbia-Franklin Pike, due west. Clyburn aligned his division of 3,000 men parallel to the Rally Hill Pike. Clyburn's 3 brigades were aligned westward. Brigadier General Hiram Granberry's brigade on the left, south. Brigadier General Daniel Galvin's Brigade in the center, and Brigadier General Mark Lowry's brigade on the right, north. I believe Colonel Tyree H. Bell's brigade of Forrest's cavalry formed on Clyburn's right, north flank, even though they were out of ammunition. One Confederate cavalry officer remembered, "It was well understood that our command had no ammunition, and the only thing we could do was to yell." Lowry's brigade marched across the ground where this marker is located. Bell marched to the north and Galvin and Granbury to the south. Galvin and Granbury followed the approximate route of the modern Saturn Parkway, with Galvin to the north and Granbury to the south of the parkway. And I'm going to go ahead and keep reading that next marker. Again, there was a little sun glare going on. My pictures aren't the best. And birds had done a little dirtying up to the signs, but I'm going to try to read these as best as I can to you. The next sign is, on the morning of November 29th, 1864, Spring Hill was guarded by a small Union garrison. Throughout the morning, the garrison would be strengthened by additional federal units, consisting of the 103rd Ohio Infantry Regiment and several companies of Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Tennessee U.S. Cavalry. The garrison fought well, but by midday was forced back to the town of Spring Hill by Forrest's cavalry. About 12:30 p.m., federal forces under the direct command of Major General David Stanley, commander of Schofield's 4th Army Corps, including lead elements of Wagner's division, entered Spring Hill from the south. Colonel Emerson Updike's veteran brigade marched through the town to occupy a ridge just north of Spring Hill. Colonel John Q. Lane's brigade followed and extended Updike's line east of town. Brigadier General Luther P. Bradley's brigade assumed the critical position on a knoll south of town. The 103rd Ohio Infantry and a section of Battery A, 1st Ohio Light Artillery, were placed across the Columbia and Franklin Pike. 18 artillery pieces were emplaced on a prominent ridge on the south outskirt of town. And Lane had approximately 1,700 men in position, and Bradley mustered about 2,000. These soldiers began constructing light fortifications on fence rails. Stanley had placed Wagner's division in a well-chosen position, which was occupied barely in time to prevent Forrest's cavalry from capturing Schofield's line of retreat on the pike through town. And of course, we're moving away from that hill. You saw some other people out there enjoying the day. Yeah, that was just a pretty place. I would like to go back to Spring Hill just to hang out more at that location. I thought that was a lot of fun. And there are actually a few more signs through here, but I'm going to read one more just to kind of sum things up from this hill. Again, this hill would be a great area to spend a lot of time when you're doing this tour. The final sign I want to read is Clyburn's advance rolled north in pursuit of Bradley's brigade, which fled north of McCutcheon Creek to establish new lines at the southern edge of town. Reacting promptly to the retreat of Bradley, Lane's brigade began to reposition itself to the south. Clyburn's pursuit was brought to a sudden halt by massive volleys from the artillery and the veteran 103rd Ohio Infantry positioned across the Columbia-Franklin Pike. Clyburn's veterans pulled up short and sought cover under an intense and deadly accurate barrage from the well-positioned Union artillery. It was now nearly 5 p.m. Sunlight had faded into sunset. Sunset was 4:49, and Clyburn had run into unexpectedly heavy opposition. He halted his advance and called for support and instructions. And we're now at the next stop, center of Union defense position, Lane's Bridge. And I'll read that marker to you. You are located at the center of the Union defensive position established to the north, east, and south of Spring Hill by Brigadier General George D. Wagner's division. The defense of Spring Hill was orchestrated by Major General David S. Stanley, commanding officer of Schofield's 4th Army Corps. Colonel John Q. Lane's brigade was typical in both strength and composition of the Federal forces that fought at Spring Hill, consisting of the 100th Illinois Infantry, 400th Indiana Infantry, 57th Indiana Infantry, 28th Kentucky Infantry, 26th Ohio Infantry, and 97th Ohio Infantry. The brigade fielded 80 officers and 1,586 enlisted men. When Lane approached Spring Hill, it became apparent that the enemy was trying to get possession of that place. I moved my command at the double quick to the east side of town, formed line of battle, deployed the 28th Kentucky as skirmishers, and moved at once on the enemy. After driving off Forrest's cavalry, Lane withdrew to his position, where he constructed a line of rifle pits on this edge, a small stream protecting his front. When Bradley's brigade was driven north of McCutcheon Creek, Lane shifted his brigade to protect the south of the town. And our next stop that we're going to right now is Ferguson Hall. It's stop number 6, and it's significant for being the death site, the murder site, of Confederate General Earl Van Dorn. And it is actually a mirror home of Ripavilla Plantation. I've said this before, with the Civil War, especially in Tennessee, there are so many copy and mirror homes. Elm Springs, the kind of Confederate museum veterans headquarters, which is lovely. If you've not been there, you need to check it out. There's a mirror home of that home just across the street from it, and that's a private residence. In Greenville, Tennessee, there is the Andrew Johnson home, which is operated by the National Park Service. And the last lady that lived there agreed to give it up to the National Park if they would build her a replica home, which they did. And I believe that might be a group home or something of that sort now. And then, of course, here in Spring Hill, you have this home, which is basically a mirror copy of Ripavilla. And if I understood correctly, I believe they're going to try to incorporate this home into some sort of a hotel. If I heard right on that. If you know anything about that, let me know. I believe it's a private place now. You can't tour it, but it sounded like there were some plans for this place. Also, while I was at Ripavilla, I picked up a book called Where Elephants Fought, a novel by Bridget Smith. It's historic fiction. I enjoyed this book a lot. It does get a bit speculative about controversial Earl Van Dorn and, his activity outside of the Confederate Army. But it was just an enjoyable book. There is a little confrontation between Van Dorn and Forrest, and Bridget Smith sort of has Forrest backing down from Van Dorn. I do not see Nathan Bedford Forrest backing down from Van Dorn. This is my perception. I don't see him backing down from anything, the devil included. But it's still an interesting scene. Oh yeah, and there is a historic marker here. Let me read that to you real quick, just to give you some info. And it's Martin Cheer's home, headquarter of Confederate General Earl Van Dorn, April to May 1863. In spring 1863, Confederate Major General Earl Van Dorn established the headquarters of his cavalry command of the Army of the Mississippi at Spring Hill. On March 5, 1863, Van Dorn had commanded his cavalry in a fight at Thompson Station, which resulted in the overwhelming defeat of a Federal brigade. Van Dorn, a veteran of the Mexican War and several engagements with Indians on the frontier, was a successful cavalry commander, but also had the reputation, deserved or undeserved, as a ladies' man. Van Dorn originally established his headquarters at the residence of Dr. Aaron White on modern Duplex Road, officially because of crowded conditions, but according to local tradition because of improper social activities, Van Dorn moved his headquarters to the larger Martin Cheer's home in late April. On May 7, 1864, Dr. George B. Peters, a prominent Spring Hill physician and politician, visited Van Dorn to discuss allegations that Van Dorn had been having an affair with his wife and possibly with his oldest daughter. Sometime during their interview, Dr. Peters shot Van Dorn in the back of his head with a pistol. Van Dorn died within hours without regaining consciousness, and Dr. Peters was never prosecuted for his actions. After the war, the Cheers residence became the Branham Hughes Military Academy and is today part of the Tennessee Children's Home. The home is not currently open to the public. Okay, so there we go on that one. And actually, just I wanted to point out about a minute ago, as I was talking about the whole Van Dorn situation, we were on a corner. There were some historic markers there, kind of giving a little more info just about the town and the battle. And I was on the corner by a laundromat, and we stopped there for a little bit. And a local guy actually pulled over and saw me taking pictures and filming, and he was real into the Civil War and kind of pointed some stuff out to me. And that's Tennessee for you, good people. But yeah, there's a little more history about the town. The local guy actually mentioned to me that some of the historic homes were wiped out. There were a couple of tornadoes that came through town that did some damage. But yeah, so just a couple more markers, a couple that weren't Civil War related, but were sort of just about the town itself. So you can look that up if you'd like. But I wanted to kind of stay focused on the Civil War right now. And we're going to stop number 8. And stop number 8 is City Hall. And I'll go ahead and read the marker there as we're about to get there. And it's the Federal Artillery Batteries key to the Union defense. 5 batteries of Union artillery positioned on this prominent ridge, extending from this general location east across the Columbia-Franklin Pike, played a critical role in repulsing the attack of Patrick Clyburn's division late in the afternoon of November 29th. This high ridge provided a classic artillery position with excellent fields of fire that permitted the Yankee Redlegs to control the fields immediately east of the Pike with their gunfire. An example of the volume of artillery fire is provided by the 4 guns of Battery A, 1st Ohio Light Artillery, which expended 166 rounds in this action. The artillery pieces located on the ridge 1 mile west of here are a 12-pounder Napoleon howitzer and a 3-inch ordnance rifle, representative of artillery pieces employed by the batteries of the 4 Corps Artillery present at Spring Hill. And there's actually a little historic marker kind of showing present-day Spring Hill and kind of giving you an idea of where things were. So that's a nice little marker. And this is us pulling into City Hall. So yeah, City Hall's right there, and over by this hill that we're kind of driving towards right now is where that marker was and the information about that. Nice little City Hall, nice little town. It was just a really pretty town. The local fellow that I mentioned made a suggestion about a place to eat for lunch, but we had other plans, but I did make a note of that. I would love to make another trip here just because it's such a gorgeous town with a lot going for it. And as usual, I always like to find a nice, cool, independent coffee shop. And man, did we find a great little coffee shop not far from Ferguson Hall and that laundromat with the historic markers. We found Fainting Goat Coffee, and I just wanted to mention them real quick. We stopped by and had some coffee. Still nice, cozy coffee house vibe. Yeah, there's their little logo on the side. They're still trying to stay open and do their thing. God bless them. They had a good crowd there. They had a great staff. They were trying to social distance as much as they could. The staff was wearing masks and everything. But this was just a very attractive, cozy coffee shop. Love their logo and what they're doing. I bought a pin. I bought a t-shirt. Just glad to see them doing their thing. And I want to go back to Spring Hill to have some coffee here and do some more Civil War stuff. But yeah, next time I would probably stop here first and get some coffee, and then do the driving tour. Maybe do a little bit of it out of order. But yeah, Spring Hill, great little Tennessee town for Civil War fans and coffee lovers.